teams, Storm Track 15 Chief Meteorologist Doppler Dan Romano and Adam Olivier. What is the latest? What are y'all seeing right now?
Yeah, we just got an update at the top of the hour. There has not been a change with two elements of this system. That includes the maximum sustained winds around the center of the storm, still 90 miles per hour, which keeps it at a Category 1 hurricane. And the pressure has not changed. It still remains at 976 millibars. However, Adam?
Yeah, the movement ticked up 1 mile an hour now to a northeasterly movement at 17 miles an hour. I will say, Dan, in the latest update, we have seen a little bit of an eastward jog according to the Hurricane Center, but we are getting these wobbles back and forth. And there you can see that little easterly jog there. So after taking more of a northerly turn, it's gone back to the east. So when you look at the forecast, there's that easterly component. In order for it to get back on this track here, it is going to have to take quite
more of a northerly
track.
So again, this is the cone of uncertainty that we like to call it. This hasn't changed since 10 o'clock this morning.
Correct.
And this will not get updated again until 4 o'clock this afternoon. So that's roughly a little over 2 hours, or a little under 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
right? It's a little after 2 o'clock. Again, you know, we'll probably see a little bit of a subtle shift to the east with this cone, but it's probably still going to include a good chunk of St. Mary Parish, as well as Terrebonne Parish, and then areas out to the north and east towards Lake Pontchartrain as well. So
yeah, and you know, it's crazy that we're so close to landfall here, probably within the next 2 to 3 hours, and we still have a lot of uncertainty whether it goes more to the north or it follows some of the more high resolution models and goes more to the south here. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see what the Hurricane Center does. I mean, we do need to get a few more positions here to see if this easterly track continues. But if this does come more to the east, the key time is now, because this is going to determine whether it comes on that southern track over towards Cocodrie that we were talking about, that would take a lot of the impacts and move them out towards New Orleans, or whether or not it goes more to the north.
Go ahead. I'm going to pull up radar imagery at the moment right now, because I do want to talk about the forward momentum with this system and how it could have a major impact on the timing of when we think this system is going to arrive. So again, this is going to be what we're looking at the moment. So I'll zoom in here and we'll draw the ruler just for heaven's sake and say from this point here, you know, we're looking right about the center of the storm moving onshore. That's 61 miles. If it's moving 17 miles per hour, that's 3 hours from now that the center of this system moves onshore. But keep in mind, you know, you transpose this 61 miles like this. Now we're talking about these outer bands impacting areas from Thibodaux all the way out towards Iberia Parish. That's 3 hours from now. That's easily going to be happening much sooner than that down in St. Mary Parish. So again, with a system that's moving this quickly, we're talking about the northern edge of the eye wall moving onshore within the next 30 to 90 minutes in some locations, because, you know, again, this is a pretty quick moving storm that we're dealing with at the moment. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, and also that area that you showed that had that 60 mile distance there, you know, that's for if this is moving to the northeast. But if it continues more on an easterly track here, then you can extend that a little longer, because now it's kind of changed that trajectory, and it's going to come more so into the southern part of Terrebonne Parish. But right now, I still think somewhere between Morgan City, which is situated here, you got Amelia here, and then Houma is right in here, and then you have Cocodrie and Dulac. It's going to be between that Morgan City, Cocodrie, Dulac area that we're going to be watching for that landfall. The other thing to note is the eye has just expanded in size. It's actually collapsing. And if you remember back to 2020, we had Hurricane Delta that came on shore in Cameron Parish, and that had an eye similar to this, where it expanded as it made landfall and just collapsed on the backside. I think we're starting to see that now, where we are just getting more of that intensity building on the north side and now out to the east, and all that's going to be coming on shore, as you mentioned. But we're getting some pretty good banding even up towards Lafayette now.
Yeah, and to the north and to the west. But these lines right here, this is basically 2 hours from now where we could expect roughly some of these larger and stronger bands moving into those areas. So again, we're talking about central Iberia Parish, where New Iberia is. We're talking about just on the southern side of Highway 90 down in lower St. Mary Parish, or I should say St. Mary Parish, and then out towards Terrebonne Parish as well. That's what makes this storm so dangerous, the fact that it's moving so quickly across the Gulf and into Acadiana as we speak.
Yeah, and while Dan's going to update the radar here, I do want to make mention we do have a tornado watch in place for St. Martin, St. Mary, and Iberia parishes until 11 p.m. tonight. Some of these outer bands that you see on the eastern side of the storm are going to try and rotate on in, and that could spin up a few tornadoes, primarily in lower St. Martin, eastern Iberia, and then of course all of St. Mary Parish, where we could see that tornado potential. It's really not for you in New Iberia up towards Breaux Bridge. You really don't have that tornado threat because you're kind of on the back side of the system, but points to the median, the center point of that eye, and then to the east of it at first, that's where we are going to see that potential for some spin up.
You know, whenever we're tracking severe weather, the biggest thing that we look at is rotating thunderstorms. And with this system, we obviously have a cyclonic flow already occurring. So that is already thunderstorms that are wrapping around the eye of the storm. And it's not necessarily the ones that are closest to the eye along the eye wall. It's actually the ones that are on the periphery and the peripherals, I should say. And those thunderstorms are the ones that have the potential to kind of spin up tornadoes really quickly, especially as they move from water on the land. It's almost like a spinning top that goes from, you know, a tabletop to a carpet. It really starts to create a little bit more chaos, and with that chaos, we're able to allow for a tornado to develop.
Yeah, and you know, one of the other things is we're already seeing some of that's taking place here out into southeastern Louisiana. We've had a couple tornado warnings, and you may say, well, wait, it's just light green. Well, that's because we're out of Lake Charles, and we're all the way over here in New Orleans. The radar beam's not seeing those thunderstorms. When we switch over to Hammond's radar, you could clearly see there's so much of these bigger thunderstorms that are developing out towards New Orleans, and you get a clearer view. In fact, I may go switch the viewpoint here, Dan, just to show you some of this.
The intensity of the rain bands on the eastern side as opposed to what we're seeing on the western side. But this dry air is really doing a number on the western flank of this system. I mean, again, Lake Charles, we're just dealing with overcast skies. Now you can see how robust these storms are farther to the east. Keep in mind that radar beam from Lake Charles has to shoot all the way through all of this rain, as I just stubbed my finger here along this glass wall here. But again, you know, you can see just how strong those storms are farther out to the east.
Yeah, and you know, Dan, when we talk about these rotating storms, traditionally with tornado watches and all that, you can see these individual supercells that are moving into New Orleans and the outer parishes, St. Bernard, Orleans, Plaquemines, Lower Jefferson. Those are the ones that will likely have the tornado threat with them. But look at the intensity of the eye wall as it's expanding. The back edge of this, there's really nothing to it on the southern side. It's all on the northern side of this system now. And this is the area that we're watching coming and creeping closer and closer to Morgan City later on in the time frame here, later today, that we'll be watching for those hurricane force, potentially 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts. We did get a couple of wind reports I wanted to bring to you. There was a station offshore, oil rig, 112-mile-an-hour wind gust. Now, that's 100 feet off the ground, but still, and you're out over water, so you don't have the frictional effects, but that's still very impressive. Patterson, the site right next to Morgan City, has reported a wind gust up to 48 miles an hour. So tropical storm force winds have definitely reached the coast here into Morgan City, and they will be overspreading a lot of Louisiana here.
Now, I believe we have meteorologist Michael Crowley. He is going to be working his way down towards Franklin within the next hour or so, but we already have Jeff Horchek. He is moving over towards Delcombe in this area right here, and then we also have Dracar Francois. He's in Morgan City, so conditions there are going to deteriorate pretty quickly. I believe Morgan City is right in this area right here. Yeah.
Yep.
So again, as we see these bands lifting up, things are going to get pretty bad pretty quickly. So yeah, this is where meteorologist Michael Crowley will be, and then Jeff Horchek probably dealing with quieter conditions as he treks from Abbeville over to Delcombe at the moment. But again, with this banding, I mean, you talk about conditions kind of flipping, you know, pretty quickly from heads to tails.
And look, even in Jennings, you know, models were not really picking up on much rain falling in Jennings, but we have pretty substantial rain falling there right now. You may pick up quite half an inch of rain pretty quickly.
It's going to be interesting to see this band, how it interacts with the dry air and how quickly this either A, falls apart, or B, how far west it may, you know, it traverses before it does eventually fall apart.
And the other thing is, usually when you see those yellows, like what we see out here, you know, we're pretty far away from the radar site. This is pretty good confirmation, since we're so close to the radar, that rain is fairly heavy that is falling in Jennings. There's more heavy rain to track too. I just want to show you, here's Morgan City. We've had one band that's now pushed north of the area. It's actually coming through Franklin. We're getting the sweep around the radar site in Hammond here. But look what's along the coast, Dan. That's kind of that first outer part of the eye wall, creeping closer and closer to you there into Terrebonne Parish.
And furthermore, it's tough to see, but this is all Vermilion Bay, and all of this water is getting piled up areas along Sippermore Point, areas towards Intercoastal City. You know, Pecan Island is more closer to the Gulf, but the western edge of Pecan Island, we're talking about, you know, seeing this water kind of work its way down, because now here we're dealing with winds out of the east-northeast. It just continues to push all of this water up, and then they work their way out towards the tributaries, out towards Vermilion Parish as well. So again, it's not necessarily just the rain that's falling, but it's also the direction of the winds, and with us being so close to the coast and kind of the erraticness, I don't know if that's actually a right word I want to use, but again, the irregularities of the coast here around Vermilion Bay, the winds have a major impact on where that water piles up.
Well, and look into Intercoastal City right here. We're getting some pretty hefty banding developing on radar. That's probably going to bring some tropical storm force winds around 40, maybe 45 miles an hour for you. Still seeing some banding here forming up throughout Vermilion Parish towards Florence Landing for you in Kaplan. Abbeville, you're in the quiet right now. Same deal, Erath, Delcombe over towards New Iberia. Lafayette, we're still in the rain. We can kind of hear it at times here. You're in Youngsville, you're in Broussard. You got a little bit of that banding feature developing, some gustier winds with that, but it's pushing out of the area right now.
Yeah, I mean, just looking outside the studio, did that a couple minutes ago. You know, it's just, we're seeing kind of a gentle push with a lot of the trees. We're not seeing the major wind gusts here in the hub city, but down to the south and to the east, the winds are going to get pretty ferocious here within the next hour or two.
Yeah, and there's that band that you can see here stretching through Jeff Davis and Acadia parishes up towards Eunice too. You're getting a good bit of rain, and also into Evangeline and St. Landry parishes. Don't want to forget about you. Even though you may get lower rainfall totals, you're still going to get some of these banding features that work up through Church Point, Opelousas, Sunset, Grand Coteau. Looking at Washington, if this holds together and reaches you probably within the next 10 minutes or so.
And it's amazing when we talk about the size of the storm, because if you're up, I mean, you talk about central Evangeline Parish right now, nothing's occurring. But we're talking about the eye wall moving ashore, perhaps as far west as Iberia Parish, or far east, I should say, as Iberia Parish. I mean, you talk about a rather small, compact system that is packing a punch. I mean, it's incredible.
It really is.
You know.
And, you know, we were talking about all the rain that's falling in New Orleans, all the bad storms that are going there. We have an actual camera, an earth camera, on Bourbon Street right now, where we can show you what the conditions are there currently and give you kind of a look versus what we're kind of seeing here. They're going to pull that up for you here in just a second. So this is Bourbon Street, and you know, it's a little windy. It kind of looks, this is at Burgundian Canal there, but you can see that the palm trees are swaying a little bit, and we're seeing a little light rainfall, but it doesn't look too different than what we have here currently in Acadiana. And you know, I think we actually can pop up some of our cameras too. Let me get to that real fast. I'm going to go through a few of these graphics. Here's what it looks like in New Iberia. Look, we got some birds flying out there, Dan.
Yeah,
they're enjoying this.
Well, I don't know if they're enjoying it. They're getting blown around pretty good.
No, free flight. It's a free flight for them. They just, you know, they don't have to flap the wings.
I don't know if it's by choice or if they're just going along for the ride, but yeah, they're there. But you can see how quickly these clouds are moving. And also, we talked about how with the banding, you're going to see lulls in activity. You know, we're not seeing any rain in New Iberia at the moment, but if you drive 10 10 minutes to the north, 10 minutes to the south, completely different scenario right now.
And this is our Queen City of the Teche camera atop the Community First Bank building. Just to orient you, this is Admiral Doyle Drive. Nish is right here off in the background, and we're at Admiral Doyle and Lewis Streets there. So we got a good view here of what's to come. We got some low-hanging clouds that are wrapping around Francine. This is a view from our Hub City Tower camera atop News 15, and you can see we got those gustier conditions. The camera is shaking a little bit. The rain's falling right now, so certainly looks very tropical in nature, but again, nothing that's overly concerning at the present time. We also have in Church Point, you can see the rain really coming down here. Look at the individual drops falling from our tower camera there out across the Church Point area. And I want to show you Crawley too, because we have down Parkerson Avenue some wet roadways. It does not look like the rain's falling too much, but you can see that hazier look off in the distance.
You know, every time I show this camera, I try to reference Old Glory as much as I can. She's been taken down. So
yeah, that's probably to protect it from any damage and destruction.
But you know, usually that's a good indication of the winds that we're contending with right now.
Well, you can see them here
we
down
have
too.
To
look
at the foliage downtown and so forth.
Yeah, we got a few flags down there. The American flag there is starting to flap a little bit. So yeah, you can see we got some gusty winds out there down Parkerson Avenue. We got a few people rolling down the streets. Watch if you do have to get out. I don't know why you'd really need to get out, but if you do need to get out for whatever reason, we are looking at some wet roadways. Be mindful of some damage like tree limbs, stuff like that. Now we're going to continue to update you on the latest with the hurricane as we go forward, but we're going to actually go back to the desk, see if Taylor and Lauren actually have any questions that we can help answer there.
We have a lot.
We do, actually.
Okay, let's go.
So when you guys were showing Francine on like the model that you had as it's approaching landfall, you mentioned it was kind of top heavy. So why are we seeing all of that action in front of Francine as opposed to like a more well-rounded storm?
I think a lot of that has to do with the dry air that has wrapped into this system, and that has created a lot of asymmetrical kind of an asymmetrical fashion to this storm. It has, you know, the bulk of the action has been up to the north, where we've seen a lot of the moisture from the eastern side of the storm kind of wrap its way up to the north, and all of the dry air out to the west has been kind of dipped down to the south. Because remember, we're talking about a counterclockwise flow. So we have this dry air that's getting wrapped into the system, and you know, because of the counterclockwise flow, gets driven into the southern side of it, and it immediately starts to eat away at that system. But also at the same time, if you notice, you'll start to see that dry air try to eat away at some of the bands on the northern side. It just doesn't work its way all the way around. But at the same time, this is also why we have such a stark contrast on the western flank of this system between extremely heavy rain and, well, nothing.
Yeah, and you know, our producer, executive producer Heather in the back, she was asking, is that the eye? That is the eye. And what we're looking at here, Dan, is very similar. I mean, almost a carbon copy of what we saw in 2020 with Hurricane Delta.
Yeah.
It was well formed right up until landfall. Wind shear and dry air kicked in, and we started seeing what we called a half a cane. The front half of it, tons of rain, tons of wind, all those impacts. There was nothing on the backside other than some breezier conditions, and I think that's what we have going on here too.
And actually, that's really beneficial for a lot of folks here, because you know, instead, you know, with a typical hurricane, we have to deal with the onslaught, and then once it pulls away as well. But conditions, once we get through the first half, are going to be a lot easier to contend with on the back half of this storm system as it moves away. And I think, you know, I didn't want to say I joked around about it, but you know, there is a slight possibility that if this system moves out of here quick enough, that areas well out to the west and maybe a small sliver down to the south and to the west of Vermilion Parish might see some patchy clearing because of that dry air already working into the backside of this system.
Yeah, well, you know, Lauren and Taylor, do y'all have any other questions regarding this too? Because I know y'all said y'all had a lot.
I sure do. I kind of want to take it back to Meteorology 101. We're talking about tornado watches for St. Martin, St. Mary, Iberia parishes. But what are the differences between watches and warnings? What does that mean for us?
Well, for a tornado watch, that means the conditions exist and there are, you know, an opportunity for the weather to produce a tornado. As far as a warning goes, a tornado warning, that means that either A, a tornado is on the ground or it's imminent, that we are likely going to have to contend with one, or the conditions are ripe enough for one to occur almost immediately?
Real quick, I do want to make mention that the National Hurricane Center says landfall is imminent with this storm. So it has sped up quite a bit. Remember, the Hurricane Center forecast was calling for 7 p.m. tonight for landfall. We're approaching 2:30, and probably within the hour we are going to see landfall. So, but as you were talking about with Lauren's question there, Dan, you know, a big thing that we get all the time with severe weather, with hurricanes, all that stuff, a watch versus a warning. Watch, basically just think, oh, okay, I just need to be prepared.
Yeah,
all the ingredients are there,
right?
But the cake's not being baked.
Yeah.
When you have a warning, the cake has been baked.
The cake's in the oven.
It's in the oven and it's happening right now. That's the best way to describe it, you know. So that's one thing I want folks to understand too. When we tell you that there's these watches, there's these warnings, you know the difference there. And also, you know, a lot of folks don't really know what parish they may be near, what parish they actually live in. It can be confusing. Like you go to Delcombe. What parish do I live in? Because half the city's in Vermilion, half the city's in Iberia.
Erath is on a Erath or not Eunice.
Yeah. What part of Eunice do you live in? So, you know, just to orient you, I want to go through our parishes here. St. Mary is this lower parish that Highway 90 runs all the way through. And that's the parish where we're focused on, because that is where we think landfall is going to occur here, somewhere either around Morgan City, maybe a little farther to the south in Terrebonne Parish. Morgan City, Franklin, Baldwin are some cities located in that. Now, you have Iberia Parish, which is next up. That's the one with this long extension into the Atchafalaya Basin. But New Iberia, the main center point there, you got Jeanerette 2 along Highway 90. And then we also have St. Martin Parish divided into two sections. And this is where it gets confusing, because in the event of a tornado watch, they issue it for St. Martin Parish, but Upper St. Martin Parish is not really going to see the tornado potential that Lower St. Martin Parish is going to see. And so that you need to know. Are you in Stevensville, Lower St. Martin Parish, or are you in Brobridge Parks, St. Martinville, which is Upper St. Martin Parish? You have Lafayette Parish, Vermilion Parish, too, down around the coast. And then you have our inland parishes of Evangeline, which is the most northern one, St. Landry, which includes Opelousas, Acadia is Crowley and Rain, and then Jeff Davis includes Jennings and Welsh. And we do have Dracar Francois, who is out in the midst of all this down in Morgan City in St. Mary Parish. And I think we're going to go try and get out to him, see what the conditions are like out there.